Hello, it is Friday. I am Mike Russell from musicradiocreative.com. Welcome to another live stream where we're going to attempt to improve a bad telephone quality podcast interview. We'll do our best to make that sound better. Now, this is Music Radio Creative Live, and we work with podcasters around the world. We're very excited to do that. And if it's about time that you were thinking about outsourcing your podcast production and just allowing somebody else to make your podcast sound great, take all that worry of cutting and editing, adding intros and outros, wondering where you get rid of all the ums and ers and all those things, tightening up your podcast and making it sound great, we have radio trained or people with backgrounds in radio working with us at Music Radio Creative to really give that professional sound to your podcast. So if podcast production is something that is on your mind, head on over to musicradiocreative.com/podcast-production and check out what we could do with you. We would love to work with you. And the best thing is you get one producer here at Music Radio Creative assigned to your show, so you can get to know them, they can get to know you and feedback on your style and help you to make your podcast sound great with all the tips I'm giving you here on my channel, like EQing, compressing, getting the loudness levels correct, improving audio, cutting, noise removal, as I'm going to cover in this episode today, and a heck of a lot more. So here I have a kind of poor quality telephone interview. Have a listen.
5 years from now, where does it...
Can hardly hear that. Well, luckily I've extracted that little sample there, and I'm going to just normalize it first and foremost so you can hear this. Let's play it.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right? I think, I just don't feel like, the researcher is never going to go out of style.
So you can hear that that's pretty poor quality interview. So how can we increase the audio quality and make a telephone call on a podcast sound better? First and foremost, you will notice that the audio cuts off here in spectral frequency. Have a look at that at the 4K mark, 4,000 hertz. And that is because it is via telephone only. So we're only getting audio that's coming in via the phone. And therefore we're losing all that lovely broadband quality of speech recorded on a normal microphone. Even Skype or Google Hangouts would have a better range than that. So if you can, try and get your guest on there. But if it has to be telephone, let's see what we can do. First and foremost, I've got a multi-track session open here. This is with my Pro Podcast presets loaded, and I'm just going to bring in that extracted telephone here and straight away drop it into Skype Guest that has adaptive noise reduction. I'm going to switch off adaptive noise reduction so you can hear what it sounds like without.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right? I think, I just don't feel like,
So that's awful. Let's switch on adaptive noise reduction and we get this.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right? I think, I just don't feel like, the researcher is never going to go out of...
So definitely that's sounding better than it originally was, and obviously there's a lot with compression, but we are still missing a trick. And like I say, do not rely in the multi-track, particularly if you're using something like my Pro Podcast presets, don't rely on adaptive noise reduction to do the heavy lifting. You should try and isolate bad noises and get rid of them in the waveform view. And here I can see a lovely gap where the guest stops talking just long enough to grab a sample of any background noise. Let me just normalize so you can hear it. That's what we're competing with. And now I'm going to attempt to get rid of it by using noise reduction, capturing the noise print like so, clicking OK to that, and then zooming out, and then running the noise reduction process over the whole audio here. And again, we'll go back to default so you can see how I'll work this. Bring up the preview window, and you can see already noise is starting to be reduced. Let's move the spectral decay rate down to 0% or up to 100%, so you can see the changes it's making. Ever so slight here, but I'm going to bring that down, bring the noise reduction up to about 80%, and reduce it further by 30 dB. Now let's have a listen.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher?
Let's bring the spectral frequency down to 0.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher?
Bring the reduction up and the noise reduction up a bit more.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right?
And I'm going to really...
I just don't feel like, the researcher is never going to go out of style.
I'm going to go quite aggressive on the low end frequencies here. This is kind of like an FTT filter EQ for isolating noises you really want to remove?
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right? I think...
So we're picking out those frequencies below 2K.
5 years from now, where does...
That's sounding a lot better already. Now, what I'll do, after applying that noise reduction, I am going to apply a very, very light single band compressor over this. So let's take that down by a threshold of -20. Ratio of 2:1. Attack and release looking good. 0 and 62 milliseconds fine. Output gain going up quite significantly there. And you see how the waveform now looks a lot better, a lot healthier down here in the preview window compared to the original. Apply, and let's have a listen now.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher?
Okay, and the final thing I will do to improve the sound quality of this telephone interview is in Adobe Audition CC 2018 under Amplitude and Compression and Dynamics, there is a wonderful auto gate that we can switch on and off.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right? I think...
You might want to move that threshold up a bit if it's clipping it.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right?
Bit more, but it's kind of closing the gate so no noise getting through when the guest is not speaking. Let's apply that and now listen to it in this multi-track session.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative research, right? I think, I just don't feel like, the researcher is never going to go out of style. It's just they have to be able to say...
Okay, so that's a basic improvement over the original.
5 years from now, where does it put the qualitative researcher, right? I think...
You can hear the difference, and the difference with just a few processes. Some noise reduction, some noise gating as well, very important. A little bit of EQ going on here in the Pro Podcast presets to make the audio sound better. And perhaps if I was to go back, I might be less aggressive on the noise gate to let more of his audio through, but you can definitely hear the difference.
Learn quicker. And then I could say, we need to adjust this. So, for example, instead of fielding...
You can hear the difference from compared to the original to the now extracted and improved version that you can get in just a few minutes of working inside Adobe Audition. Really, really great fun. This is the Friday episode of the Music Radio Creative live stream. So next week, just so you know, there are still going to be videos going out, but they're not going to be live streams. They are going to be pre-recorded videos with podcast production and editing tips for you. So make sure to stick around and subscribe over at youtube.com/Music Radio Creative. But I will not be live as I will be in San Diego in the USA. And I'm very excited to be speaking about simple ways to improve your podcast audio quality at Social Media Marketing World 2018. Would love it if you can join me out there. If not, go and grab a virtual ticket. You can do so over at mrc.fm/SMMW.